Welcome to Never Rewrites. I'm Isaac Askew.
I'm Dustin Rea.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to pontificate on the subject of credit, specifically credit for ideas or credit for implementation. And early in my career, I had a very good manager who explained that if you're a good manager, you give your people in your team credit because it reflects, right? You're a manager. Nobody expects you to actually have done any of the work. If you've done the work, something's wrong. And so always, of course, give credit to the people who did the work because your job as the manager is to get the people to do the work. You're not to doing the work. And he was explaining this to me because are many bad managers, and I had worked with a few at that point, who will take credit for doing the things that their team has done, and they look like putzes to good managers because, one, nobody expects, if the manager has done any of the work themselves, they're doing it wrong. They're being a bad manager. And two, they're not, good managers know and can see that they're taking the credit and not giving it to the people in their team. They're being a bad manager on both ends. And years ago, Isaac and I worked together, and I was leading the team. I wasn't a manager, so I was doing the work. And Isaac had a really good idea, and later on, people didn't believe it was his idea. They thought it was my idea, and they gave me credit. And I was actually no longer even there at that point. I wasn't taking credit because I would have said, no, it was actually Isaac's idea. Originally, I thought it was a bad idea. And they gave me credit for Isaac's idea, and it eventually led to Isaac leaving. And so I think this is a great topic to talk about, like as a manager or as an individual contributor, or Dustin, in your case, as a consultant, how do you handle the topic of credit, like giving credit for people's ideas? I will kick off. So these days, I am not a manager. Anytime I am a manager, it always goes very poorly, and I try to avoid it at all costs. But I do end up being team lead quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of what it is I have ideas, and I try to bring up people. And so I always make sure, the way I always say it is, any idea that is mine, I give to the team. And any idea that is somebody else's, I name them when I'm talking about this idea. And that's just how I always do it. And one of the things that good managers know and bad managers don't, because it doesn't happen to them, is when you work this way, people will bring you ideas. If you only talk about your ideas or you take credit for ideas, people won't bring you ideas. They'll hoard them. And most of the time, that just means they get lost.
Right.
Like nothing happens. And I think, Dustin, you were saying before we started hitting recording, you've had experience where people have taken ideas and taken credit for them to your face.
Yeah. I've seen both sides of the spectrum too. I mean, yeah, it's great signal of a good manager is to see them doling out credit to their team, and not trying to hoard the credit themselves. But yeah, I've had multiple client engagements, and I think some of it's just human nature sometimes. But I've had client engagements where these are engagements where I'm being brought in for my ideas. Like literally, that is the thing that I'm being paid to do, is bring in the ideas. I'm not necessarily hands-on in some of the projects. Sometimes I am, but in these, I've had engagements where literally my value is the ideas and processes that I'm bringing in.
Right, pure consulting.
Pure consulting, yeah, like not implementation, but it's pure consulting. And I've had members of the client's org take credit for those ideas as presented to them in front of my actual client that's paying me, in front of my face in a meeting. And of course, the thought is, right, like what, if I say no, it wasn't their idea, I mean, that looks very confrontational and and not collaborative as a team member, right? So I think you really just have to, at least in my experience, it's better to just kind of eat that and double down on the value that you're providing, and try to have more people in the room when you're delivering your ideas, or deliver them in writing, so to say.
So that goes along. So let me dig deeper in that. So when this person took credit for your ideas, and again, you're being brought in a pure consulting engagement, and so Was this person, did the person who was taking credit also, were they also responsible for implementing the idea?
I don't think they were responsible for implementing, but I would say that they were responsible for the outcome of the, you know, the situation that we were in. But yeah, I don't think they would be necessarily the ones doing the actual implementation work.
Okay, but they're responsible for the outcome.
Right.
So they were,
And so, I mean, part of consulting is trying to make, my clients rock stars at their job, and that's totally
mm-hmm.
great. There just also has to be like some way for me to justify, my existence when I'm doing that, right? Like if someone in the organization is taking credit for that, then great, they're getting something great of great value from our relationship. But how does that, get communicated back out to like the value that we would bring in as an organization, as from a consulting perspective. So that
right,
can
because this
be
wasn't the person who was signing your checks.
exactly, yeah. It's not the person paying me. It's not even the person that originally hired me.
Hmm.
So this is someone I was looking to as like, hey, we're working on this problem together.
Yeah.
Let's just get it solved, right? And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
as obviously giving them the solution as it's their, they are technically my client. But then yeah, to see that get used as if like it was their concept, made it feel like makes me feel like I'm there for no reason, but
Yeah.
that's not the reality.
How did that impact your working relationship going forward?
Uh, it it impacted it, I would say, not with the client that pays me, but it impacted the way that I worked with that person specifically.
Mm.
And I think
Hmm.
it maybe made me a little more guarded in just how I work in general. Um, this has happened to me several times over my career, but this particular case I think is what made me really start like documenting my structures and my processes, and then like publishing them. So there could be like no denial of the origin of this idea going forward, because now it's like it's dated, it's online, it's public, um,
Well, I mean,
things
even
like that.
better, it's writing stuff down, and then even if you had this process and you were using the same process, but now that you've written it down, it will be
Exactly.
so much more clear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So multiple benefits, but yeah, that definitely that experience is what made the pain enough to change to start documenting and publishing
Hmm.
several ideas that I reuse, right? Because most software companies have the same set of problems, and there's different solutions and different implementations to those problems. But I've done a lot of work over my career to uncover those patterns from solving the same problem over and over in different
Mm-hmm.
organizations. So I do consider that kind of like my IP, because unless you've worked with several software companies, it's highly unlikely you would have the level of clarity on like the pattern that happens and the origins of it and how we solve it, and while also doing that profitably. Like it may sound, ideas sound cheap, but in when we're talking about saving tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, or increasing profit by X%, we're talking about ideas that have real world
Mm-hmm.
financial impact
Mm-hmm.
and have real value. So yeah.
Yeah, as we were saying before the call, I think I said I like to say, uh, no one every no one's situation is unique, just your implementation, and
Right.
having the depth and breadth of seeing all those different implementations lets you see the patterns.
I've got an interesting story on that where we were kind of brainstorming a solution, like everybody in a room. So it's kind of hard to like document the idea. And you would assume if you're brainstorming in a room that if you said it first, people would assume it was your idea.
Mm-hmm.
But we had this interesting issue where this customer was taking down a whole like MySQL cluster, and we were trying to figure out why their particular instance was causing this. And when we looked at them, they had like millions of notes attached to different. I forget, it was like a deal or some other kind of like object that we're just attaching notes to, and the note just said what time it was. And it turns out that there were things that happened that didn't show timestamps, so they wanted timestamps. So they set up an automation that would write a note with the current time when that thing happened to
Hmm.
implement their own essential timestamp because we didn't implement the feature yet just to show what time the thing happened. Um, so they had millions of extra notes just chilling there whenever things happened. Like just imagine like if you moved a deal to complete or whatever, or did something to a customer object, every single event, if it didn't have the timestamp, they would have like an automatic note underneath it that showed that when that thing happened. And so people were like trying to figure out, oh, okay, we should change this, we should fix this, we shouldn't allow that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, when I looked at it, I'm like, well, can we just reach out to the customer and say, can we just delete like your oldest 90% of your notes? It seems like you don't use them in this case. You needed them at the time, but you probably don't need them in the future.
Yeah.
And then that's how we'll kind of like mitigate this. That way we can just go ahead and kill most of the notes. Everything's fixed. Then we'll reach out and say, hey, what are you actually trying to solve for? And then fix it for them that way. And then I said that, and then people got quiet. And then a couple seconds later, someone said the exact same thing I said, but like in slightly different words. Like, oh, we should do some customer outreach and see how they're using this product. And maybe we, to get ahead of it, we can just delete most of the stuff they got here because it seems like they're not using it this way. And I'm like, what? Like, am I just that bad at communicating? Or like, did people not hear it? Or is this one of those people who just like, here's an idea, then suddenly realizes it's good, then like somehow retcons it to being their idea? I don't know. But you would assume that people thought it was my idea, but they were like, Rick, that's a great idea. So it's just one of those cases where I'm like, I'm confused at how that actually, even if you document it, it doesn't really matter. It depends on who you're with, the gravitas in the room, the people in the room, the C-level person's in the room and restates it. It has a bigger impact than some little peon at the bottom of the totem pole.
There's definitely social dynamics about who gets listened to in a brainstorming session and who doesn't.
That could be it. It was a while back. I was more junior in my career for sure.
Yeah, and I always wonder too: are people, should we have some level of grace and benefit of the doubt, right? Like maybe they are not trying to be self-serving. They're like thinking, oh, this is the best thing for the team, or whatever, and not necessarily trying to take credit. But yeah. But you can never know, right? Like that's kind of the one.
Right. Well, especially with managers, it takes active effort to phrase it, because I mean it is something that they've done, right? Their job is to get people to do something. The thing was done, so they did it.
Right.
But that's not really that's not. I mean, yes, but no.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you achieved the outcome, but what were the great things that people did in order to get to that outcome is I think what you want to celebrate as the manager, right? And give credit for those things.
Yeah, and I mean credit's important. Like if Jeffrey, like you were saying earlier, like if every time like you give or if you come to somebody and like have an idea and the idea ends up being taken, you don't want to share it with that person anymore. If a person has a reputation of taking credit for other people's ideas, you inherently don't want to share with that person, and so you don't share that idea with the team, or maybe you keep a good idea to yourself because you want to find a way to claim it. It doesn't feel good to have the idea taken, especially if it's a really great idea and like you want to use that, like whenever you have your yearly or whatever, some kind of like review, and they ask you what you did that year, you want to have some good ideas to show for it because they'll use that against you. If you don't have the ideas to show that or justify that you've been growing as a developer, you'll get passed up for promotions. So that's kind of the importance here. It's not just being like, oh, I had a good idea and people are stealing it and I want to put it to myself. It actually has a real impact. If you can deliver a good idea and make the company appreciate you, then that looks good for you. So facilitating an environment in which you're celebrated whenever you have good ideas, and you're on a team with a manager that's like, oh, Isaac's killing it. And actually, you said, the generic this team did it, but actually this was all Isaac, and like that feels great, and people hear that.
Well, especially as you get up in the ranks. So if you're senior, even the senior's not so much, but like if you're team lead or a staff or a principal engineer, people judge you based on your outcomes, and they really don't care. Like implementation is table stakes. They assume you can code,
Mm-hmm.
and if you can talk, you talk about outcomes, and you give credit to where those ideas for those outcomes came from. People will bring you more ideas, and at the senior staff, at the staff tech lead, whatever, your power, your superpower is picking which ideas to do, and anything you can do to get more good ideas or more ideas in general into your mental pipeline makes you better. And giving everyone credit for their ideas, it's like, oh, person A had a great idea, and I said, that's great, go implement that, and this is the outcome that happened. All you have done as a senior staff, whatever, is said, yes, that's a great idea, go for it, and tracked the outcome. And it's all you're supposed to do. Like, don't get me wrong, but because you give credit, you'll get more of those ideas into your mental pipeline. And that's the key power, or the key dynamic you need.
I love that. And even if you're a business owner and thinking, oh, this is all fluffy, there's no real, hard science or hard finance around this, I would argue that there's loss efficiency in your like hiring and your attrition, like your loss of employees, right? Like some of your best people are going to leave for things like this, and there's not necessarily going to be a direct signal to you that this was the reason. So if you associate that with costs, like the cost to then now recruit, hire, train, get new tribal knowledge, get them activated, get them deployed, the loss of momentum, like the opportunity cost for you as an organization. There's so many things that you would be losing out on in order to not just simply try to facilitate and cultivate this type of culture in your organization, where sharing is encouraged and credit is given where credit is due.
Yeah.
Well said. All right. Any other last thoughts on this?
No, I think we can give credit to the clock because it is done.
Whose idea was this for this episode? Is this Jeffrey's? Good job, Jeffrey.
This one was my idea. Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
Dustin Rea.
Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.